friend Amanda, and we're not going to show you her friend David, except he looks like he could beat me up if I don't. We've just been talking about catching sturgeon out here, and your son caught one that was, you reckon, around 400 pounds.
It was a big fish.
Big fish. I mean, so we're up by the Fraser River. We're in Lillooet, British Columbia, and look what they just gave me here. That Interior BC, next best place on earth.
Lovely
after
meeting
Banff. Lovely meeting you. Thank you so much. I had a grilled cheese sandwich here. Next time I come here, I'm bringing my whole group for lunch. But I'm going to take you for a little walk because I have to leave for Whistler in a little while. But Lillooet is the Gold Rush Trail, mile 0 of the Caribou Trail, which is only sort of true, right? Because really it's Yale. You know, there's two trails.
Coming up from Harrison.
They got me up through Harrison.
Yeah.
But of course, Vancouver didn't exist. Little tiny Victoria was created in 1846. After the border was created, the 49th parallel, people moved up to Victoria. It was tiny, 500 people. They couldn't attract anyone. And then suddenly, I did have a grilled cheese. Suddenly, they found gold in 1858 in the Fraser River. The population of Victoria doubles, and then the ships move up, and they come in, but they can only get as far as Yale, BC, because the power of the river was so strong, they had to walk up and over. And then they built this trail from here, mile 0, all the way up another 400 odd kilometers up to Barkerville. So that is the history, the heart and soul of British Columbia. And you missed the beginning, Paula. You missed my friend Amanda here. So there's people from Ireland and the Netherlands and all over the world. So I'm going to keep it kind of short, everyone, because I have to get back to work. But I thought I'd give you a quick, because I'm so thrilled to bring you all here. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll see you in my next visit. Bye. Bye.
It was a pleasure.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love. See, this is everything I love about this part of the world. Everyone is friendly. So I came and I had a grilled cheese sandwich, and of course I had a beer because now I have 2.5 hours to get up to Whistler. But I want to start to show you around me. It is fantastic. Look at the high mountains in the back. I am deep in the Fraser Valley. I wouldn't call it the Fraser Canyon, but I call it the Fraser Valley. Hi to see everyone. So there we are. Hopefully you're hearing me okay. I didn't put in my headphones, and it was lovely. People there, I mean, we just have these wonderful conversations. The gentleman who owns the place was the fire captain here when they had to evacuate once upon a time. But let me give you a sense. This tree up here is so full of life. I'm great. You can hear me so well. So this tree here, but we are going back. So obviously this is a principally First Nations community. So when I talk about some of the history, it's colonial history. People have lived here for literally, not figuratively, thousands of years. Birds are just nesting up in this tree. But there, I'm basically looking straight north. Now, I know there's an A&W there. A&W, by the way, if you don't know the story of it, was actually an American hamburger chain out in Los Angeles. They went bankrupt and it was purchased by Canadians. And so even though it really has a very Canadian feel to it, that's its origins. Just kind of an interesting side note. 2,500 people in the town of Lillooet. And it does, I'm sorry, I actually did put a mint in my mouth just after lunch. But this whole area is where the Fraser River is coming straight north-south. Now, the Fraser is about 1,100 kilometers, roughly. It starts up in the mountains, just across the Alberta-BC border, across the Continental Divide. And it's a beautiful little clear river, and then it becomes a huge, deep, muddy river because it's not filtered anywhere. And everything it draws down from this massive area. We're 268 kilometers from the ocean. Lovely sunflowers. And it eventually deposits so much soil that is really what you call like the city of Delta and the airport in Vancouver. That's that whole area. Now, the whole thing is entirely within British Columbia and is considered the greatest salmon river in the world. Now, Lillooet itself, well, it's been inhabited for the valley for thousands of years. And the people, the indigenous people of these areas, had a pretty darn good life because they had access to salmon. And the salmon are running. I actually saw a salmon today. Hello, you cowbirds, little blackbirds. But they, in fact, let me see if I can just nip across and take you down over the river. There's so many stories to tell here. I'm sorry, I just don't have the time to do it properly, but I sure had fun at the hotel. We can actually look back to where I had lunch. I just knew I would meet people who were local, and just, I mean, everyone's friendly. I mean, what's that old saying? You know, when you say to, oh, how are the people wherever you live? Say, well, how did you find them in the last place you lived? It's still, there's a warmth to these kind of places. And we're down in the world where, of course, there are totems. Some of you have joined me on virtual tours in Hope. Now, I'm still 168 or something kilometers from Hope. And Hope is where the river turns from north-south to go east-west. And again, they were hoping to be north of the 49th parallel. Otherwise, it would have dropped below the 49th parallel, been in American territory, and British Columbia probably would not have survived. There's their rec center, and I love the new solar panels up there too, which is pretty cool. So we're going to be heading out. There's so much fire damage up here. But what David was explaining to me over at lunch when he was fire captain, the one upside for these communities is that, of course, fire tends to burn up rather than down. So it saved the communities a bit being down in the valleys. Fascinating. But we were earlier over at Hat Creek Ranch, which is one of the historic ranches on the route up the Caribou Trail, and that was heading to Barkerville. Good, this is going to be just beautiful. Very good agriculture in this part of the world, provided you have irrigation. So down in that valley is the mighty Fraser River. Now, the Fraser is always murky and muddy because it's not filtered at all anywhere. So that's one of the significant things about it. And also, it's virtually impassable because it's such a massive flow of water. Now, you know, I've got my whole tour group on this particular tour from Quebec. And of course, the St. Lawrence, the second largest river system after the Mississippi. So there's the whole story of Turtle Island, or North America, is, of course, all about water. All that noted, the power of the Fraser just cuts this whole region almost in two. It's spectacular. Have a look down here. So you have the old bridges. It's still heading south before it hangs a hard right there towards the west. Sorry, every now and then I keep slipping into French terms, and that is because I'm doing my whole tour in French. So I said vers le ouest, towards the west. So I'm just behind their rec center. Now, the Chinese story here during the gold rush. So 1858, gold is found on the Fraser River. It was actually two colonies, New Caledonia and Vancouver Island. Victoria, beautiful, beautiful Victoria, which we all love, that was actually when they closed down the headquarters of the Hudson's Bay Company, which was Vancouver, Washington, across from Portland. After the border was created, they moved up to Victoria. Now, everybody loves Victoria. However, Victoria couldn't attract people. It was so far away. In fact, any of the goods, when we were visiting Hat Creek Ranch earlier today, plates were sent over from England, and it took a year for them to get there. And they actually packed them in molasses. How's that for an interesting little tidbit of information? And so you created a little Victoria, and you had tiny little New Westminster, but had people looking for gold all over the continent. You'd already had the California gold rush, and they find nuggets out there in near Hope, and that starts a rush inland, and then all the way up, still another 400 kilometers north of here, maybe 350. Barkerville is where they have one of the biggest gold strikes in human history. And that strike leads to people coming up and over. But because the Fraser down through the canyon at Yale, which is near Hell's Gate, which is the narrow part, no boat could ever come up there. They had to walk up over the hills, and they would get to here. And when they got to here, they would start their trek all the way up towards Barkerville. And that was the birth. And so it was Governor James Douglas over there in Victoria who built the Caribou Trail, and they fused the two provinces the two colonies 1866. 1867, they were invited into a union with Canada on the proviso that there was a train that was built, which is why Banff exists, of course, financed the train and paying off part of the Caribou Trail. But the Chinese, who had been up here during the gold rush, were used as cheap labor, of course, on the trains. And it is said that for every kilometer of track in the west of Canada, 2 Chinese workers lost their lives. Always important to remember this. And here, I'm not going to have time to get there, but there's big piles of rocks up the hill, and they're called the Chinese rocks. And that's because the Chinese were not allowed to pan for gold. So they panned the leftover material that panned by the miners. Can you imagine? It's pretty heavy history that as people worked their way up the valley, hey, they found gold, and they still find gold up and down. Another interesting thing I just learned at lunch is that it used to be a claim was only $80, and now that you've got all these YouTube things of people looking for gold and so forth and so on, all of a sudden people are trying to take these over, but you have to show development on your claim in order to have it. And so fewer claims are just more expensive. They put them up to be about $800. Now there's my tour coach in the distance there. But by wandering around where I did, there's a lot to show. This is the museum. There's a totem, a history of the Chinese in Lillooet, and then of course 1941 when Canada declares war on the Japanese Empire, rightly so. However, they rounded up something like 22,000 Japanese Canadians and interned them into these valleys. Now, it's another heavy conversation, but do have a look at this mountain environment. Now, where this is so significant, these are the Cascades. We're on the far eastern slope of the Cascades here. And really, those are the big coastal, not big, the massive coastal mountains, which are, there's the marker, excuse me, the big coastal mountains. And that's what holds in all that kind of softer soil that is the Okanagan Valley, the high desert of interior Canada. So you can see it just up here, but then suddenly the big forested areas. So when we leave here in about 15 minutes, all of a sudden, what I'm going to be seeing is like high alpine environment. But there's mile zero. So check out the jail. There is a graveyard here for the hangman judge. Really, I honestly need a day to come and do about 6 or 7 different tours here because there's so much to talk about. So I'm just going to get safely across the street because I want to take you to this marker over here. So the Caribou Trail, which I think I spelled O-U, and I should have spelled it O-O, but there it is. Created by the Historical Society of Lillooet, September 4th, 1939, to commemorate the building of the Caribou Road. Construction commenced from Lillooet in 1859, mile zero. How's that for some pretty amazing history? Now, these towns do struggle. It's better roads, and of course the mighty Coca Hollow, the big road that goes all the way out to the coast from Kamloops, has cut off a lot of traffic through these areas. But on the flip side, we're saying during the pandemic, suddenly when all our provincial and international borders were closed, people started to come and discover more of the interior of their province. Look at all the colors up there. Right? You've got naturally occurring iron, and you've got tons of copper. We're not that far from the biggest copper mine in all of Canada. And I see it from the air every now and then. The weather is moving across me. How these lovely clouds up above. So there's their visitor center and their town museum, and then a huge slab of jade. That is my tour group over there, who, by the way, are just lovely, appreciative people. But I want to try and come and show you one or two of the plaques. I'd really love to spend time down in the Fraser. So historically, you can pan anywhere in BC without a metal detector if you have a pan and a shovel. Apparently that's being limited now on other people's claims. Makes sense. But claim jumping is a bit of a different story, right? Like that's actually a criminal offense. But gold is important, but it's more what it represents, more the concept of gold. There's a bell in the distance there, and that bell goes back to a runaway train that went off the tracks a number of years ago. Let me just show you a few plaques here, and then I'll have to say goodbye because it is time to get going for the trip up and over to Whistler, BC. But I just wanted to show everyone. So here's the Chinese in Lillooet. So it's hard. The Chinese became part of the recorded history of British Columbia during the earliest days of the sea otter trade when they helped independent merchant John Mears, thank you, Diane, build the first trading post on Vancouver Island in 1788. Remember, the oldest Chinatown of the world is San Francisco, and the second oldest is Liverpool. Now, there's a couple of other points. There's one story just up here about the Japanese, and that was the picture I think I posted that one earlier. Yeah, so that's the Japanese in Lillooet over here. And then this is really what I want to show. May 10th, 1911 is the declaration of the Lillooet tribe. Now, this is a really significant thing. I'm not going to stand here and read it all to everyone, but to whom it may concern, we, the underwritten chiefs of the Lillooet tribe, being all the chiefs of said tribe, declare as follows, and it's in their language too. We speak the truth, and we speak for our whole tribe, numbering around 1,400 people at the present time. We claim that we are the rightful owners of our tribal territory and everything pertaining thereto. We have always lived in our country. At no time have we ever deserted it or left it to others. We have retained it from the invasion of other tribes at the cost of our blood. Our ancestors were in possession of our country centuries before the whites ever came. Anyway, just a fascinating picture and a fascinating history. I don't know, and I don't want to say things that I don't know. I don't know if it continues all the way up here, but down in Hope, I know the term is Stolo. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it. That's the people of the river. And of course, if you go back into pre-European history, pre-colonial history, it, from every indication, people lived much longer lives in this part of the world because they didn't have food insecurity. And right now, because the salmon are running, they've got the tarps out. People are catching the salmon and drying them. Pretty cool. So here's a runaway train wreck. Look at that. 2006. Oh, I remember this too. Yeah. So pretty fascinating place. I'm sorry to make this short, ladies and gentlemen, but I do actually have to go back to work. So I'm heading up and over to Whistler. Now, tomorrow, if it's really good, I still have a little candy in my mouth, I'm sorry. If it's really good weather in Whistler, I might go for a big hike up the mountain because I do have a bit of free time tomorrow, in which case I will do some sort of a live feed. But for the moment, I just wanted to share a little bit of this really spectacular environment. You're very welcome, and I'm enjoying my group immensely. They're lovely people. So as we always say, peace and love. And I'm back at the hotel. Next time I'm here with the group, I'm going to totally call them in advance and book in the group for our lunch. So thank you, everyone. It's lovely to see you, and it's so nice to connect from all over the world. So I'll be in Whistler for 2 nights, then down in Victoria, and then in Vancouver. And then if there's no strike, oh, hey, Richard Paul. And if there's no strike, then I will fly up to Edmonton to see my kids. So I won't promise a virtual tour there. Anyway, feel free to share this anywhere in the world, and we will all keep in touch, and I will see you all very soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.